Taxi.
Hi, my name is Ken Essenbach. I live in Camp, Ohio.
Okay.
Me and my wife, we just found a dead body in our freezer.
Dead body in
Freezer,
the freezer?
Yeah.
All right, it's okay, sir. Is it a male? Is it a female?
I think it's a female. I need a camel police here right away.
A missing woman's body was the one being stored in a Camel freezer. Police have just confirmed that it was Shannon Graves. She hadn't been seen for several months.
In February 2017, a young woman vanished without a trace. No goodbye, no warning, no explanation. Months later, her remains would be found hidden inside a freezer. And the man responsible was someone she once trusted with her life. This is not just a story of murder. This is a story of betrayal, jealousy, and a crime so disturbing it shocked an entire community. This is Unreal Crime. The night itself seemed calm and unremarkable, but behind the closed door of a single apartment, a nightmare was quietly unfolding. Those walls would soon become silent witnesses to a horrifying act, guarding a secret too dark to be revealed right away. Shannon Graves went through that evening unaware that it would be the final chapter of her life. When the sun rose the next day, no alarms were raised. No one realized she was gone. Days turned into weeks. The world moved on, indifferent and unchanged. But for those who truly loved her, something wasn't right. Her phone went unanswered. Her presence was suddenly erased. Each passing day deepened their fear. What began as a search for simple answers slowly turned into something far more disturbing. This was not just a missing persons case. It was the aftermath of something far more sinister. A tangled story of deception, jealousy, and a desperate attempt to make someone disappear forever. But justice has a way of resurfacing, no matter how deeply the truth is buried. And in time, the hidden reality would begin to crack. Shannon Graves was born on November 4th, 1988, in Ohio, USA. She was raised by her mother, Christine Graves, a strong and devoted single parent who did her best to provide stability. Later, Christine found love again with a man named Ronnie, and together they built a new chapter as a family. From the moment he entered their lives, Ronnie stepped into the role of a father figure for Shannon, offering her guidance, protection, and unconditional support. Shannon welcomed him wholeheartedly, forming a bond that felt no different than that of a biological father and daughter. Those who knew Shannon remembered her as someone with a gentle spirit and a naturally caring heart. She radiated warmth, compassion, and an unmistakable kindness that drew people toward her. In 2016, she proudly earned her cosmetology license, a major achievement that filled her with excitement and hope. For Shannon, this accomplishment represented far more than a job. It marked a new beginning and the chance to move forward after a difficult and turbulent childhood. Her friends lovingly referred to her as Star, a nickname that reflected her bright personality and the light she brought into their lives. She stood out for her free-spirited nature, her honesty, and her selflessness, always putting others before herself and leaving a lasting impression on everyone she met. Yet, Shannon's deep compassion often worked against her, leading her into choices that would later bring pain, especially in her personal relationships and her struggles with substance use, which intensified after the devastating loss of her mother. Those closest to her observed a troubling pattern. She frequently became emotionally involved with men who were ultimately harmful to her well-being. Whether it stemmed from sheer misfortune or a natural pull toward rebellious, troubled personalities, the outcome was often the same. Still, despite these setbacks, Shannon refused to see herself as defeated. Earning her cosmetology license gave her a renewed sense of purpose, and she was determined to reclaim control over her life and build something meaningful from her hard-earned success. She believed she was finally ready to close the door on her past and step confidently into a future filled with possibility. Ronnie, along with her friends, saw firsthand how resilient she truly was, how she continued to push forward despite heartbreak, loss, and disappointment. Shannon had survived more than most, and she carried an inner strength that inspired those around her. Tragically, that strength was tested once again when her judgment faltered in a critical way. Her path crossed with Arturo Novoa, a man who would change everything. Originally from Puerto Rico, Arturo was charming, magnetic, and deeply passionate about music. On the surface, he appeared intriguing and talented, but beneath that exterior, he guarded his personal life closely, revealing very little about who he really was. That guarded nature was likely no accident. Arturo's reluctance to share details about his past stemmed from a long and troubling criminal history that stretched back years. In 2004, he was first arrested on charges related to assault and property damage, marking the beginning of a pattern that would continue to escalate. Just months later, he found himself in even deeper trouble, facing accusations of escaping custody and interfering with official duties. By 2006, his record had grown more serious, with charges for felony fleeing following a police pursuit. And later that same year, an aggravated arson charge was added to his growing list of offenses. Even after serving time, his encounters with the law did not stop. In 2008, he was arrested once again, this time for trespassing. His legal troubles continued into the next decade. After being evicted from his residence, Arturo faced additional charges in 2010, including weapons-related offenses and unlawful entry. Court documents revealed a consistent and troubling pattern, betraying a man deeply involved in criminal behavior and repeatedly turning to illegal activities to survive. Despite this shadowy background, when Shannon and Arturo began dating in the summer of 2016, the relationship initially appeared stable, even promising. Shannon slowly grew more comfortable with him, eventually introducing him to the people closest to her. As her trust deepened, she began spending more and more time at his place, unaware of just how dangerous the situation truly was. That same year, Shannon brought a puppy into her life, a small but meaningful source of comfort, joy, and unconditional companionship. The dog quickly became important to her, offering stability and affection during a time when she was trying to rebuild her world. As the holidays approached, Shannon reunited with her family for a warm celebration filled with shared meals, laughter, and the exchange of gifts. It was a moment of togetherness and normalcy, one that felt hopeful and full of life. No one present could have known that this gathering would be the last time they would all be together as a family. Just 2 months later, Shannon unexpectedly crossed paths with her sister Debbie DePaul while she was with Arturo. Their interaction was short but meaningful. During the brief conversation, they spoke about Debbie's birthday in March, and Shannon mentioned that she had already started making plans for it. That detail stood out, reinforcing how much family still mattered to her. But when Debbie's birthday finally arrived, Shannon never appeared. At first, her absence seemed unusual but not alarming. The family assumed she was running late or caught up with something and would reach out soon. As the hours passed, concern began to grow. Shannon never showed up, never called, never even sent a message to wish her sister a happy birthday. An uncharacteristic silence that marked the beginning of a far more troubling realization. When Shannon failed to show up for the Easter gathering the following month, the family's unease turned into genuine alarm. This was no longer a single missed event. It was a pattern that couldn't be ignored. With each passing week, their anxiety intensified. Desperate for information, Ronnie finally contacted Arturo directly. Arturo claimed that he and Shannon had ended the relationship and insisted that she had moved to Cleveland to be with another man. His explanation felt hollow, especially when Ronnie and Debbie tried to verify it themselves and were unable to reach Shannon in any way. Refusing to accept vague answers, the family decided to search for the truth on their own. They went to Shannon's apartment, hoping to find some indication of where she had gone or what had happened. Instead, what they discovered only deepened their fear. Her car was still parked there, untouched, and her phone had been left behind. Two things Shannon would never have willingly abandoned. Even more troubling was the absence of her dog, the companion she adored and rarely went anywhere without. Around that same period, Arturo was arrested on drug-related charges, a detail that further unsettled the family. Days turned into weeks filled of dread, confusion, and sleepless nights as they waited for answers that never came. Finally, in June, unable to endure the uncertainty any longer, Debbie officially reported Shannon missing, setting a police investigation into motion and marking the beginning of a search for the truth that her family had feared all along. Shannon's family openly acknowledged her past struggles with addiction, but they were adamant about one crucial detail. She had never gone this long without reaching out. No matter how difficult things became, she always stayed in contact, especially with the people who loved her most. Her prolonged silence was completely out of character and deeply unsettling. As the investigation began, authorities asked the public to come forward with any information that might help, while they simultaneously launched their own efforts to locate her. They checked hospitals, detention centers, and jails, hoping she might be found safe somewhere. Each search ended the same way, with no sign of Shannon at all. Tracing Shannon's movements proved to be an enormous challenge for investigators, largely because so much time had passed since anyone had last seen or heard from her. Months of uncertainty had erased any clear trail. Even so, detectives pressed forward, requesting access to her phone records and carefully examining her personal relationships and daily habits. Her family explained that Shannon sometimes spent long stretches of time with her boyfriend and would temporarily fall out of touch, which led police to focus more closely on Arturo. When questioned, however, he simply repeated the same explanation he'd given Ronnie, that they had broken up and she had moved away. His account offered no clear timeline and raised more questions than answers, adding another frustrating layer of ambiguity to an already troubling case. There was no way for investigators to verify Arturo's story. No evidence supported his claim, and no trace of the mysterious new boyfriend Shannon was supposedly living with. As doubts mounted, detectives began widening their focus, digging deeper into her past relationships. That's when they learned about an ex-boyfriend named John. The discovery immediately caught their attention, offering what seemed like a potential lead worth pursuing. Upon further investigation, police found that John wasn't just running his own business, he also had a criminal background connected to drug trafficking. In fact, John's arrest and subsequent incarceration had been the breaking point in their relationship with Shannon. Friends recalled how devastated she had been when she learned about his conviction, describing her heartbreak, anger, and deep sense of betrayal. The situation became even more complicated when investigators realized that John had been released from prison shortly before Shannon was believed to have disappeared. When police eventually tracked him down and questioned him, he denied any recent involvement. He told detectives that he hadn't seen Shannon since February, explaining that during their last interaction, she had mentioned getting back together with Arturo. Once again, suspicion was redirected back to the man who remained at the center of the case. His statement suggested that the relationship between Shannon and Arturo wasn't as perfect as it appeared. Still, John admitted that he had lingering feelings for her at the time of their last conversation, leaving the police with two possible suspects, but no concrete evidence. Investigators were desperate for a breakthrough. When Shannon's phone records finally arrived, authorities hoped they would point the way. But they offered little insight beyond showing that she had gone to work as usual in late February before her phone was suddenly deactivated. The number had since been reassigned, and around the same time, all activity on her credit cards had stopped. The investigation had reached a frustrating stalemate. What the investigators didn't yet know was that the answers were coming, but in the most horrific manner imaginable. On July 30th, 2017, a man from Youngstown called 911 to report a chilling and grisly discovery. Over the phone, the caller reported that human remains had been discovered inside black garbage bags, and most shockingly, the head was missing. Emergency responders quickly alerted the police, who arrived at the home of the caller, a man named Ken Campbell and his wife Jill. While forensic teams began examining the remains, the couple was taken in for questioning. They explained that the freezer containing the body parts belonged to a friend who had recently lost power in his home. About a week earlier, the friend had asked them to store the freezer in their basement, claiming it was full of meat that he didn't want to spoil. On July 29th, Jill decided to make spaghetti and meatballs for dinner, thinking she could borrow some meat and replace it later. When she went to the freezer, she found it locked, but she didn't think much of it at the time. After all, their friend had always been somewhat eccentric. Undeterred, Jill grabbed a screwdriver, removed the screws, and pried open the lock with ease. But instead of finding the expected assortment of frozen meat, she was confronted with piles of black garbage bags and a bucket, all emitting a foul, putrid odor. A wave of dread swept over her. She slammed the freezer shut and immediately called her husband. When Ken arrived, they cautiously opened one of the bags and were horrified to discover a severed human foot. Because Ken and Jill were questioned separately and their accounts matched perfectly, they were quickly ruled out as suspects. Investigators then turned their attention to the man who had placed the freezer in their home, whom they knew as Anthony Gonzalez. Ken explained that he had met Anthony years earlier through a mutual friend. They had bonded over a shared love of music. Anthony owned audio equipment and had talked about his plans to record rap songs. Though their interactions were occasional, Ken never considered him a close friend. He described Anthony as unpredictable and sometimes even aggressive. Despite the couple's full cooperation, the victim's identity remained a mystery until forensic experts discovered a critical clue: a scorpion tattoo on one of the feet. The tattoo matched Shannon's, reflecting her zodiac sign. While additional testing was required to confirm, it soon became clear that the remains were indeed hers. Investigators were then faced with a terrifying question: how and when had she ended up in that freezer? Shortly afterward, Ohio's lead prosecutor held a press conference to discuss the case, which was rapidly emerging as one of the most horrifying and disturbing in recent memory. Although the medical examiner could not determine the exact cause of death without the victim's head, Shannon's identity was confirmed through fingerprint analysis. Her family was heartbroken upon learning the tragic fate of their beloved daughter and sister months after her disappearance. The reality was far more horrifying than anything they had imagined. Despite their immense grief, Shannon's loved ones came together to honor her memory with a candlelight vigil in a scenic local park. Speaking to reporters, Debbie shared her belief that Shannon's soul had found peace and that the vigil was meant to celebrate her life rather than focus on sorrow. That evening, dozens of attendees lit candles and released lanterns into the sky, many wearing shirts bearing messages dedicated to Shannon. A close friend pledged to carry her spirit forward, determined not to let this tragedy define her memory or legacy. Although her family shared that desire for justice, they could not conceal their immense pain. Ronnie, too heartbroken to appear on camera, admitted that his grief was beyond words. He had loved Shannon as his own daughter and now yearned for justice. Meanwhile, investigators ramped up their search for Anthony, and it didn't take long for them to uncover a crucial detail. Anthony Gonzalez was only an alias. His real identity was Arturo Novoa, the very man authorities had already been considering as a suspect. As the investigation into Shannon's disappearance progressed, new revelations emerged quickly. Officials discovered that Arturo had been involved with a woman named Katrina Layton, who had moved into his home just 2 weeks after Shannon was last seen alive. Given Arturo's extensive criminal history, police acted swiftly to pursue him. Both Arturo and Katrina were taken into custody and their home was thoroughly searched. Investigators discovered red stains on the walls, a knife, and a manual for the freezer where Shannon's remains had been found. Ken, who had previously believed his friend's name was Anthony, was stunned to learn Arturo's true identity. He was not alone in his confusion, as Arturo frequently used aliases likely to hide his past, which involved involvement with illegal substances. During questioning, Arturo remained composed and consistently denied any role in Shannon's death, claiming he had no knowledge of her location and distancing himself from the freezer. Katrina echoed his denials, but their statements fell apart when police found the key among her belongings that fit the freezer's lock. This evidence directly linked them to the crime, keeping them in custody as the investigation continued. Meanwhile, John, Shannon's ex-boyfriend, helped investigators uncover additional details by speaking with Shannon's acquaintances. Through these conversations, he learned about a bonfire gathering that Arturo had attended, where a witness reported that Arturo used the fire to burn personal items. When questioned, Arturo claimed the items were Shannon's clothes and that he was destroying them as revenge for alleged infidelity. That night, he was accompanied by a friend named Andrew Herman, and together they continued burning the clothing. Investigators later examined the site and discovered remnants of the fire, including a bracelet that belonged to Shannon. As the investigation progressed, they contacted a woman who knew Andrew and his wife, Michelle. She revealed that Arturo and Katrina were responsible for Shannon's murder, while Andrew had assisted in dismembering her body. According to this witness, Katrina had long harbored jealousy toward Shannon, a resentment that was reportedly reciprocated. The case grew even more disturbing when neighbors reported seeing Katrina walking Shannon's dog and using her credit cards for small purchases around the area, suggesting she had begun taking over parts of Shannon's life. Amid these shocking developments, Ronnie passed away unexpectedly, never living to see justice served. Debbie, devastated by grief, sought therapy while caring for her younger brother and Shannon's cherished dog. Meanwhile, both Andrew and Michelle were held in pretrial detention. Authorities had substantial evidence that Michelle had threatened witnesses in an attempt to obstruct the investigation and conceal the crime. As the case went before a grand jury, a clearer picture of the events emerged. On February 24, 2017, Arturo had killed Shannon, likely in Katrina's presence. Later, Arturo invited Andrew over and asked for his help in dismembering Shannon's body. The three attempted to dissolve parts of her remains in sulfuric acid, but did not have enough to complete the process. They disposed of her head while storing other body parts in the freezer, and some remains were discarded in an unknown location that authorities have yet to locate. According to the lead prosecutor, Arturo was a petty drug dealer, motivated by jealousy over Shannon's financial stability, while Katrina wanted her out of the way to claim Arturo for herself. Facing the possibility of the death penalty, all four defendants eventually accepted plea deals. Arturo Novoa was sentenced to life in prison for Shannon's murder, and Katrina Layton received an 18-year sentence. Andrew Herman was sentenced to 12 years in prison, while Michelle received 2.5 years, followed by a 6-month substance abuse program. Arturo later attempted to appeal his sentence, but the original ruling was upheld. Determined to honor Shannon's memory, Debbie created a social media page dedicated to her sister, frequently sharing photos of her beloved dog. She also regularly visits Shannon's grave, where she has developed a meaningful ritual. After trimming the grass, Debbie spray paints a large pink heart beside the headstone, pink being Shannon's favorite color. In a local interview conducted a few years later, she recalled the moment she received the devastating call about the partial discovery of Shannon's remains. However, it wasn't until the global health crisis, when she lost her job and found herself isolated at home, that the full weight of the tragedy truly sank in. With no distractions, Debbie was forced to confront and process the immense loss she had endured. Despite the overwhelming pain, she gradually found comfort in allowing herself to grieve. Today, the investigators who helped bring Arturo to justice continue their search for the missing portions of Shannon's remains. Debbie remains hopeful that they will one day be recovered, while keeping her sister's memory alive through her dedicated online tribute. Shannon Graves dreamed of a peaceful life, a life filled with love, stability, and second chances. But instead, her life was taken in one of the most brutal ways imaginable. Today, her family continues to fight for her memory, for justice, for closure, and for the parts of her that are still missing. Shannon was more than a victim. She was a daughter, a sister, a friend, a light in many lives. If her story moved you, let it remind you to protect the people you love and never ignore the warning signs. Thank you for watching Unreal Crime. Subscribe for more real stories that deserve to be remembered. Until next time, stay aware, stay safe.